What is going on? This is the platform with a purpose, the platform that doesn't dare to be better than, less than, but we certainly do dare to be different than. My name is Carl Mandic. You can find me over at Twitter and on Instagram at CarlXMandic. And I could happily say we are streaming live across Facebook, 2 different pages, a group, my own personal account if you want to find me there, facebook.com/Carl Mandic. We are on, well, what is now Periscope/Twitter. It's going to be Twitter TV, everybody. FYI, that's why I got all those little bubbles above there. Periscope's going, adios. And we are on Twitch, and I am happy to report, guess who got back on YouTube? We worked things out. And for anybody that wants to put content out there, I'm not going to make some big diatribe or some, long-winded speech about this. But if you are going to put content out there and you're going up you're the little guy, David Goliath, you got your slingshot, think you could just shoot for the sky and hit Goliath right in the eye or head or however the story's written, be careful. I would recommend being judicial. Being very respectful and cordial with them. And we worked things out. I didn't mess up, actually. That was a nice thing. So it wasn't on me. And I'm not trying to shift the blame that I was a guest or something like that. It was literally a misunderstanding. But the emotional part of this, I think a lot of people get emotionally attached to the content, the artistry that you might put out. YouTube even allowed me to record our meeting of how I kept it together because it's important to really keep things, again, emotionally intact when you're dealing with somebody that is bigger than you.
Nobody cared that I was in the ring. All they cared about was streamers. Ole, ole, he's leaving. He's a big hero. Then he cuts a little promo. Oh my God! Suddenly he has some English words he can spew out of his ugly face. But he's leaving, and everybody's stuck in his.
Whoa! Is that the right clip? I don't know. Sorry, YouTube. A little tongue in cheek. I'm just having fun. We worked it out. What up, Jared Wise? What's going on, my man? We have. This is an edition that the platform was built for. This is by way of another great friend of the ChatPack, Don Parker, who was commenting in last night. If you watched Jock Sampson, of course, it was me and Megan Nelson. Jock, of course, of IWC, International Wrestling Cartel, and Greetown Wrestling is a whole bunch of other promotions across Ohio, West Virginia, Pittsburgh. Geez, he's wrestled everywhere and anyone. He recommended, hey, I heard you mention FMW. Are you like a fan? And I'm like, yeah, I love it. I can't get enough. But I don't know enough about it. He's like, well, check out this YouTube page. So he sends me a link. Get a link, go to it, and I'm like, whoever this person is behind this is a curator, a historian, somebody that not only has respect, but knowledge and can tell one hell of a story. Hopefully I didn't build him up too much. We're so honored and humbled to have on with us today, live here on the ChatPack. It is Thursday night, Bret FMW, and we have so many questions for him. But first, I'm not going to do him justice without a good intro video. I mean, he deserves his own entrance music, right? That's what I thought.
You know, I have no more love for anybody in this world.
Well, there you go. Bret, let me ask you this. When you say those three letters next to one another, to maybe a wrestling fan that doesn't know, how do you begin to describe FMW? Because I don't know if I did it. I went in a little bit naive, as a little peek behind the curtain. I DM'd you and I'm like, hey, I thought people were aware of this. And so I kind of overstepped my boundaries a little bit. I'm like, oh yeah, you guys know FMW, check this out. And I showed them Onita and Funk and the outdoor that was used in there. And I'm not sure exactly which stadium I know you have that, but I showed that, and it just goes up in this big, and then they have that gnarly guitar riff. And people were like, what the hell is that? Like, what did you just show us? I'm like, oh, was I kind of alone in this one? Or I thought it kind of correlated ECW in our age range or demographics. So how do you begin to describe FMW to maybe a fan that's just starting to learn about it or wants to know exactly what you do or how you've curated the history?
I would call it a trailblazing promotion. I mean, you got to realize back in the early 90s, this is even before ECW, where they're doing barbed wire, not only barbed wire, exploding ring death matches and everything. When people think of ECW, you think of, street fights, or you think of, blood and some really good matches as well. But with FMW, you added a layer that I don't think ECW ever had, where it was just this passion and the love that Onita had for this business, what he was willing to do, and just like I said, innovative. ECW gets a lot of credit, and rightfully so, for kind of changing the business. But there isn't an ECW to change the business if they're not seeing what FMW was doing in Japan years prior. So you add that aspect of FMW, Onita, like you said, exploding ring matches and blood and everything before ECW, and then you add in Hayabusa years later, like a whole new, it's pretty much a whole new promotion, and you bring in Hayabusa, you bring in Tanaka growing up, and a bunch of the younger wrestlers, and then you have not only great matches, but again, they continue that passion, that heart that Onita had for FMW, and they include it in their great matches, as well as, they still did street fights. They still did the Masato Tanaka, Mike Awesome type matches. And so there's just like multi-layers of FMW that I just, I don't think any promotion's ever done, that a promotion that was willing to just change completely, go from one great to another great in such a short amount of time. And like I said, it just trailblazed ECW to what eventually WWF took from ECW. So in a lot of ways, FMW is kind of a big part of what became the Attitude Era in WWF years later, just based off of what ECW took, that WWF took, and you had the most popular time period in wrestling history in the late 90s as a result.
You just jarred my memory, and I told you this is a chat. I don't plan any questions, but you jarred something loose right there from the subconscious. I don't know what happened right there, but you kicked it loose. How I found FMW is something that I actually didn't realize until right now. I saw it because I originally had told myself, oh, it's probably Mike Awesome. And I told you that over the phone, that I'm like, yeah, I love Mike Awesome. Like, he's like, I've never seen a big guy do what he could do. I cannot watch that 70s guy. Let's not even, let's cut that from the show. Let's edit that out later. The thing is I stumbled upon a Bull Nakano match, and I'm like, wait a minute. You have female. Wait, what's going on here? Because I'm like, is this, so at first I'm like, is this some Jumping Bomb Angels, All Japan type of thing? At first, it was in Japanese. Like, I didn't know what it was. And I highly recommend everybody check out Bret FMW on YouTube. I swear to you, on all the followers thousands of followers that you have on there, subscribers, I should say, to be more precise, I've never seen more clear, clean, just manicured footage that you have, and you've edited it so well and listed the top 100 matches, broken it down by middle, beginning, and end, and giving us this real story. But the female aspect, and I'm sorry to do this as a little bit of a tangent, but I even had it in the intro there of that. That was that unique to Japan at the time, because I know that they had some female wrestling, but for them going into barbed wire, I mean, even just to see that, I know it's a little jarring for some people, but that female aspect.
Well, they've always had female wrestling in Japan. There was All Japan Women's, which was just a full-on promotion of just, of women wrestling. But FMW was kind of the first promotion to include women as a division. So it's men and women wrestling. And so Onita, when he started FMW, was like, hey, I don't have that much talent here. Let's kind of make things different. And he always considers, wrestling should be like a toy box where you go in and you're going to find a different toy each time. And so for his thought process is, hey, we're going to find hardcore matches. We're going to find martial arts wrestlers. We're going to find, the midgets. We're going to find women wrestlers. So it was kind of a way to disguise the fact that, hey, he didn't have that much talent. So let's just kind of have something different each time. And like I said, so he started a division for women. Was not very good at all. The women were not that talented at all. And so he had some people reach out to some former All Japan Women wrestlers and because at the time, All Japan Women is this big promotion where every teenage girl wants to join it. There's lines and lines of 16-year-old girls wanting to get into the wrestling business. And as a result, they could be picky. So they're, hey, if you haven't shown enough growth, you're out of here after a couple of years. And so that was the case for Megumi Kudo and Combat Toyota. They had been kicked out of All Japan after a couple of years for just not showing enough growth. Because, like I said, All Japan Women could just be so picky, and hey, everyone, we're the only women's division, or we're the number one women's promotion. We can afford to be picky. So you're not showing enough growth. Goodbye. Well, Onita picks them up, brings them into FMW, and they become really talented. It's like kind of like it took them a couple years to really get going, and they become great wrestlers. And then as the years go by, Onita retires, and hey, there's going to be a need for deathmatch wrestling, in place of Onita, because Onita's not there anymore. So hey, Megumi Kudo, Combat Toyota, they're willing to have these death matches. So they had a barbed wire match, and then Megumi Kudo had a barbed wire match against her rival, and then about 5 months later in that video, it's Megumi Kudo, Combat Toyota at Kawasaki Stadium, Combat Toyota's retirement match, and it was the very first no ropes exploding barbed wire death match for two women, and they put on what I feel like still the best FMW match throughout the entire history, my opinion. But because of what they did, they had a great match on top of adding the exploding barbed wire to it. A lot of times you think of death matches and it's just doing, getting hurt, but they put on a great match on top of around the getting hurt, explosions and everything. Then you add in all the drama and the emotion of Combat Toyota retiring. And so to me, that still is the best FMW match because of everything that it provided. It kind of was, if you want to see FMW, hey, here's a great example of it right there. Great wrestling, explosions as well, and then the drama afterwards.
Okay, so you hit on something right there. Did I make an ass out of myself? Did Bull Nakano not make a run in FMW at all?
She wrestled a couple times.
Okay, but she did. I didn't make a complete.
You mentioned women, but yeah. So Bull Nakano wrestled so at the time in '92.
Feel better.
No promotions didn't really interact with one another. You didn't really see very much All Japan, New Japan. Well, FMW, because they had such a small women's division, they were willing to have to work with All Japan Women. So for a big FMW show in 1992, there was Bull Nakano and Hikira Hokuto taking on Megumi Kudo and Combat Toyota in a tag match, All Japan Women versus FMW.
So this is a two-part question, and again, folks, this is one of the, as we mentioned, and it's kind of, I don't even want to say, it sounds cliche to say ironic, but we both use the word layered. This is an onion of wrestling that you really have to peel back. And the more you revealed, I didn't realize we were on the phone for 40 minutes. I looked at it and I'm like, wait, where did the time? Because I was like so entranced by what you just had caught me. And I'm like, I didn't know any of this. Mm-hmm. Now, here's my two-part question. what years are we talking about FMW's? Okay, actually, this is going to be like kind of 1, 2, and 3. What years are we talking about their rise? And with that rise, what does at that time, during that time period, what does the Japanese wrestling landscape look like? And before you get to those two, I want to ask you this. You mentioned that I was a fan of it for the same thing that you saw. I saw a very good match with the teases of the bar, without having to use it. It's not like they're going right into it, folks. It is a very much, when you put it at number 1, I was like, I've never seen this all the way through. And I watched it and I go, yeah, that's probably the best I've ever seen of that. I'm not saying that to blow smoke, but you have a Terry Funk would they refer to him as a gaijin over the? I mean, that'd still be a common term.
He's probably one of the most beloved, but yeah.
Okay. So when I think of him during this time period of the years that I think you're going to mention, I think of New York Knockout, right? Troy, New York, between him and Ric Flair in the I Quit match. And then you see him doing this, and then I know he goes on to ECW. So, and I'm not asking you to defend it, but what is your kind of, I guess you did answer it in a way. What is your answer to those that say, oh, it's just those big booms and the referee wearing the spaceman suit and all this blood, guts, and gore? How do you ask people to look at it? Do you give them that toy box mentality like you just mentioned? What's your answer for that?
No, I mean, it's hey, it's the type of wrestling that I like. And I've watched a lot of wrestling over the last 30 years, and it stands out. Again, it's that passion that FMW brought that I still don't see, especially today, but, back then even, of wrestlers, giving it them all, and hey, and a lot of the FMW, it wasn't the greatest wrestling ever, but at the time, especially, you got to look at it in early 90s glasses. There wasn't the a lot of ECW to kind of, or the deathmatch promotions to kind of water it down. At the time, this is the most innovative stuff that you're seeing, street fights all over the building. Like I've seen videos of Onita and he's brawling all over the building, and the entire 3,000, 4,000 fans are just following him along, screaming his name. Stuff like that you don't see. And then you have just the passion and the emotion, and and there was bad wrestling, but there's a lot of great wrestling as well. It's a 12-year plus promotion. You're going to have good and bad. So, I mean, if people aren't going to like it, or give it time of day, then, it is what it is. What I've always wanted to do is just, hey, this is what it is. If you want to try it out, at least give it a fair shot. If you don't like it, okay. But if you do, here's a top 100 matches. If you watch 100 of these matches and you still don't like it, then okay. So I've never been one to be like, no, you gotta like this. Look how great this is. I mean, everyone likes different things. So that's never been my thing to be like, no, you gotta like it. But again, I always want to be like, but hey, let me give you everything here so you could see, okay, give it a fair shot, essentially. So that's just me personally.
You mentioned Onita being the masses that would be following him. I hate this what if game because what was done to him obviously was criminal on multiple levels. I'm not trying to use that as a pun, but one game I don't like to play is the what if Bruiser Brody game. Because if that guy could move the masses from the Caribbean and Puerto Rico to Japan, and Stan Hansen, same thing. But Brody, I don't know if he would have gotten into that. I think he would have. He could have ended up in WWF, but if he had not left this planet the way he did under the circumstances, my gosh, what if, he could have been another person that brought that is, again, because here's what I'm going to ask you in this one. The years of promise. So what put them on the marquee? What got them known? what years are we talking about, and how big was the tape trading game into this? Because a lot of people have asked me this one question. Did we get this on pay-per-view in North America? And I always go, check out Thursday. You'll get that answer.
So they started up in 1989. That's when FMW was created. It kind of, it was a very, very poor promotion. Onita was his career had ended in All Japan and had been retired. And so he's looking to get into the business once again. And so he starts up FMW in 1989. And like I said, very poor promotion. They've got minis, they got women, a lot of the show. And they started off and the reason it's called Frontier Martial Arts is because it was wrestler versus martial arts guy, the karate versus wrestler type gimmick. And after you do that for so long, it's okay. What else can we do? And so Onita had been in Puerto Rico and everything, and he saw the barbed wire, and so he introduced that to Japan. And so that's when they started having the barbed wire matches. Well, then he goes, well, let's take this up a notch. Let's have an exploding barbed wire death match. And so he has an exploding barbed wire death match in August 1990. When that happens, he gets all the attention. Like, wow, he's on the front cover of magazines. He's now being invited to appear on TV shows nationally. He ends up winning Wrestler of the Year in the Japanese media. He wins Match of the Year for that exploding barbed wire death match in 1990. So 1990, they really kind of start picking up and begin gaining momentum. And the next year, they're running Kawasaki Stadium, drawing 30,000 plus fans. In the next couple of years, up until 1994, 1995, Onita goes, I'm going to retire, and everyone goes, I got to see Onita for the last time. I got to see this street fight or this barbed wire death match for the last time. And so for a year plus, he is, that is the prime FMW is 1994 to 1995. It had just been building and building up until that point. And then when Onita announced he was going to retire, that's when it was, okay, top notch. This is the top, this is they are a really big successful promotion as a result. And then then Onita retired and Hayabusa took over, and they were a much smaller promotion because there were so many Onita fans. I always compare it to Hulk Hogan, building Hulk Hogan up for all these years, and then all of a sudden he's gone, and now Bret Hart's in the top guy, and it's a completely different style. It's now wrestling instead of what they had focused on for so many years. So you're going to lose a lot of the fan base like WWF did back then. Well, but again, Hayabusa now is doing great matches, and he has this this really cool look and gimmick, and all the wrestlers are now really getting, because before it was Onita and FMW. FMW was Onita, but now it could be a whole promotion based off several different wrestlers. You might like a Masato Tanaka. You might want to go see a Mike Awesome. They're focused more now than what it was under Onita. Again, not as big, and they had to start off really small, but they grew and grew as a result. And so, as far as the years go, when it comes to FMW's popularity, I would say 1990 to 1997 are the peak years, the top, as far as, hey, this is a legitimate, really successful drawing promotion. And as far as tape trade, as far as could you see it, it was all based off tape trading pretty much in the mid 90s. Before, let's say 1995, it would literally just be a Wrestling Observer newsletter people going, hey, I have this tape. Will you trade me this tape type situation? So not that big. 1995-ish, 1996, that's when the internet starts getting bigger. That's when ECW is kind of at its peak, and RF Video is they're selling FMW tapes at ECW shows. So that kind of fan base is already, I want, let me see what else is out there. I'm going to an ECW show. I'm sick of WWF. Let me, and hey, there's something else out here, this Japanese promotion that's doing explosions and everything. So that it was kind of that combo there of just the internet getting bigger, allowing for tape trading to exist, as well as, like I said, fans going to ECW shows and already kind of having that similar interest and expanding their interest. So that's pretty much where a lot of the people found out about FMW, and it became an internet following back in the mid 90s.
So let's touch on this for just 1 second. Did FMW, and I guess this is, not looking for like a hot take or your opinion, but more perspective and being able to look at it. And I'm going to show a couple of pictures while you answer said question. at the time, was FMW forced to be different than because All Japan and New Japan, or maybe another promotion that our audience or our demographic is not aware of? It is, oh boy, I don't want to go too heavy on the verbiage here and say cutthroat, but it was competitive, very competitive. Where would you on the Richter scale of the Japanese wrestling landscape of 91 through 95, 96? I mean, are these guys battling it out? What's that like between, we know what it was like in the States when WCW's got the lead for 83 weeks and WWF is the rank, it has more of the lineage and the legacy. ECW is the renegade. So they all had their roles. So what roles were they all playing at this time?
Yeah, so I mean, I wouldn't say it was as cutthroat as, especially when it comes to FMW. New Japan was still the number one promotion. It always was. They were still able to run Tokyo Dome several times a year. So it's not just, FMW was able to sell out Kawasaki Stadium a couple times. That still didn't compare to what New Japan was doing, where they could run multiple times at the Tokyo Dome and have successful shows, if not sellouts of 60,000+ fans. So New Japan was always number one. All Japan was number two. They were able to run Budokan Hall about 4 or 5 times a year and draw a sellout each time, 16,000+ each time. So FMW was always the number 3 promotion at the time. There wasn't, All Japan and New Japan, I think it was kind of like a rivalry, but they didn't hate each other like WWF and WCW did. Mm. And then FMW, they were, in a lot of ways, both promotions helped FMW in a sense where, Giant Baba, Terry Funk's not going to work FMW unless Giant Baba gives him the permission to work FMW, because you work for Giant Baba, in All Japan, you have that loyalty to Giant Baba as a result. So it had to, if Giant Baba said, no, Terry, you're not going to FMW, then he wouldn't have gone to FMW. So there's that aspect where it's not as, like I said, as cutthroat just because of Japan. But again, they're still rivals. It's still, hey, I want to be the number one promotion. FMW wanted to be the number one promotion always. Onita wanted to always be the number one promotion, but it was just pretty much an impossible task to, All Japan, New Japan been around since 1972 at the time, so they've been around 20 so years. And FMW, the fact that they could even get in the conversation after just a couple years was amazing, but they were never going to really overtake either promotion. And again, just kind of going back into All Japan, New Japan helping, both promotions, Hayabusa ended up working for them. They wanted FMW for their Super J Cup tournament. Hey, we want Hayabusa in the tournament. Bring him over to showcase FMW. Things like that. Hayabusa, hey, he wanted to show. I want to show everyone how great of a wrestler I can be, and I can only go so far with the FMW wrestlers. I want to work for All Japan as well. And so Giant Baba, okay, come on aboard. And so Hayabusa actually did several tours and worked for 2 years in All Japan, as an FMW wrestler. And that. So the fact that in All Japan, they're letting FMW in. In a way, it's kind of like that WWF ECW relationship in the 90s. Yeah. Where it's like, okay, we're bigger than you, but we're still rivals. But we accept that you're number 3. Don't try and pass us. But as long as you stay at number 3, you're good. But that kind of thing.
Have you been to Japan?
Yeah, I've been to Japan 8 times.
So I'm guessing you've gone to like a Wrestle Kingdom or
I went to Wrestle Kingdom in 2008. That was my first show. So I usually would only go.
Wait, I'm sorry. What year was that? I missed
2008. That. So I went to Wrestle Kingdom 2. So that was Tanahashi and Nakamura.
God, I thought it was.
Yeah, and then, but I'm not the biggest New Japan fan, but I went with a group of people. That was my introduction to Japan, because the guy that set up George Mayfield, who was a big internet guy at the time, like that, where you went to go get, he would go to Japan multiple times a year, and he would bring back VHS tapes and calendars and stuff like that. And he had connections with certain wrestlers and certain people. And so he asked, hey, if you pay, I'll bring you along on my trip. And you'll get to meet Hayabusa. And so I got to meet Hayabusa that way for the first time. And then after I went there, I go, hey, I could do this by myself. I don't need to, I picked up on, okay, I can do this. And so every summer I would eventually go to Japan for about 6-7 years in a row. I would go during the summer. So I only went to one Wrestle Kingdom because I only went in January one time.
I am looking, just wondering, because there's only 2 things left on my wrestling bucket list I have to do. I've not seen a show at MSG. I'm sorry, 3. Being from Chicago, embarrassing. I've never seen a show at the Rosemont Horizon. I was very sheltered. But I snuck off to see ECW. I would. And we're going to make a transition here in a second. I want to just touch on this Wrestle Kingdom 2 card. AJ Styles, Christian Cage, and Petey Williams, known for inventing the Canadian Destroyer, defeated Rise. That would be some guy named Prince Devitt. Never heard of him. Actually, I know who Minoru is. A collection. I'm not familiar of the Milano.
He was a Dragon Gate wrestler. He actually started up as a FMW dojo guy, and
I did not know that.
Yeah, and worked. He was Hayabusa's young boy, but he ended up leaving. He never wrestled in FMW, and then he ended up training with Ultimo Dragon in Toryumon, that would later become Dragon Gate.
Some of the names that you're gonna want to go and check out. Actually, I've got New Japan World, or the app, and I know they just expanded their app. I'm gonna go watch this one literally as soon as we get done. Match 2 involves Christopher Daniels. Match 3 involves Abyss. Match 4 is an 8-man tag match with just a lineage of my gosh, I'm just going through it. Tiger Mask to Taguchi to Tanaka. Wow. 5. What the hell? Wait, what? 08? Were they not in any promotion? Brother Devon, Team 3D, did WWF?
No,
they were in TNA. Okay. Okay. So there was. Okay.
They had a relationship with TNA at the time, and actually, yeah. So after the show, actually, we went to the Hard Rock Cafe in Tokyo, and that's where I met AJ Styles that night. Met Christopher Daniels, who I actually was like, "When's Curryman coming back?" And then, sure enough, he showed up. Curryman showed up in the TNA. Yeah, I met.
You're a fan when you ask, "Hey, when's Curryman coming back?"
Yeah.
How do I break the ice with this conversation?
Yeah. So I got to meet a bunch of the wrestlers. Christian, the Dudleys were there, just hanging out at a Hard Rock Cafe after the Tokyo Dome.
Great Muda and Goto. Giant Bernard, who I believe ended up being was the part of Albert. He's training at the NXT. Giant Bernard, wow. And they brought him back as Lord Tensai. That did not go. Travis Tomko defeating. I can't believe I'm reading this. I didn't know about this card. I knew the main event, but I didn't know the rest of the card. Defeated the Steiner brothers. What the hell is going on here? Kurt Angle versus Nagata?
What? Sorry?
Kurt Angle was a champion versus Nagata?
He was the IWG, like that. Antonio Inoki had created his own IWG.
The third belt is what it. Yeah,
that he had. But I have a funny story about. So I met Hayabusa that morning. We went to a restaurant, and it was me and a bunch of the other people that were on this trip, and we're talking to Hayabusa and everything. And then all of a sudden, Scott Steiner walks in, and like everybody else, everyone was pretty much American or Canadian. They all see Scott Steiner. They all just walk off to go talk to him, go see him. And I'm like, nope, I'm sticking with Hayabusa. I'm going to keep talking to him. So it actually allowed me some time to talk to Hayabusa because everyone else went off to go talk to Scott Steiner in that restaurant.
Okay. We're going to go with this comment because, Jared, I was going to bring this up later. After just watching Wrestle Kingdom 15, they were given thunder sticks. They were, obviously we're in a pandemic, a pandemic laced wrestling environment, entertainment environment. Life, no matter where you are, is impacted some way, somehow by it. But they did some things to like not have them touching hands and different things like that to not spread germs, which are actually, I'm like, oh, okay, that's actually pretty neat. Like, I thought it was inventive. I'd never heard of that. When I first got into New Japan, it was only by proxy of getting Destination America, I want to say, when they were running like the crossover ROH to New Japan. I was living in Vegas at the time, and I saw Shinsuke. And I didn't know what I didn't know. But what I did know is the first time I watched it, it was a Dominion. It wasn't one of those. It was pre-Omega. I actually can't even remember which one it was. But yeah, they are sitting. To us, it seems like they're sitting on their hands. The FMW crowd, is that byproduct of the times of the 90s where you could be a little bit more boisterous? Or was that just the FMW crowd of what we see in ECW of, those classic same 5 fans you see, Sign Guy and, Faith No More Guy and Straw Hat Guy in ECW. You see those. Were the FMW fans different as the product was different?
Well, a little bit. I mean, it's still in the sense they're Japanese fans, but yeah, it's a different type of Japanese fan. Where, I mean, I've been to a New Japan show at Corrigan Hall where that's one of the most electric feelings just because of how into it they got just based off the stomping and everything. It's different. I went to a Big Japan show and there was that electricity based off them brawling all over the building. And, it just depends on where, I don't know, I mean, how many shows you've been to, but, there's just that sometimes where it's like you feel that electricity, like this match is taken off and the crowd is into it. And especially if you ever go to Corrigan Hall, that's the number one building because of the size. And that's where such a majority of the fan base, hardcore fans go. So you could see a great wrestling match and they'll go crazy. You could see a street fight and they'll go crazy. What Onita was able to do with FMW is, have these street fights, have these brawls, and pretty much every show have this fan base that just is going crazy for him. And, they're also able to slap the ring, which All Japan and New Japan fans, there was always guardrails with them. FMW, it's like, hey, after the main event, you can come up and just slap the ring and add to the, to the experience and everything. And, I was just talking about how New Japan and Big Japan, they both created this electricity. The one big moment I had with the new FMW promotion that was around for a couple years ago with Onita, and Onita's late 50s at this point, and the match is okay, but he does his Onita theater afterwards, and he's screaming on the mic and, crying and yelling, and the fans are so passionate just based off him talking and him screaming that I felt that electricity, that I felt like, wow, this is like a moment. It's like one of those things I'm never going to forget. It was like an amazing 5 to 10 minutes that I remember walking out like, wow, like that just was like that feeling. And so, again, was the new FMW, but that was what I was able to experience live. So you add that, you have kind of and that's the very tail end of what quote unquote FMW was. You take the prime of FMW where everything is hot. Onita is a brand new act, and it is, just something that these fans weren't experiencing for the first time. Again, great wrestling match, can create a lot of electricity or great heat, but, a great brawl can take it up to another, just a completely different notch, a different level of just, wow, I just, you go to Japan or something, you see someone fighting right in front of you. And then, like that's a thrill right there just to see, have that where two guys are throwing chairs at each other right in 2 feet away from you. So there's things like that, create that was the reason why FMW was, had such a wow. The fans are so crazy and so rapid because it was different and what it was providing.
The fans were so crazy and what they were providing. This is where I'm extremely intrigued. I'm sorry for everybody that can hear Buddy barking in the background. He's a 2-year-old dachshund. Sorry. Here's where the lines start to get blurred for me, because what you described earlier was, what if a boxer went up against a wrestler? Or I'm not saying that verbatim, but surmising that the idea was, what if these two different forms or styles clashed? No pun intended, guys, gals. What if these two styles clashed? Were they before the UFC? Had they done it? Were they coming up with this? And because the whole UFC diatribe and the whole UFC narrative is that, the Gracie family said, well, I do jiu-jitsu and beat a boxer. Okay, cool. Let's get in a cage and let's do it. And then you had UFC 1, which I saw on VHS, which led me, like my uncle had it, which led me to go watch ECW, which led me then later in life to be like, what the hell am I seeing in FMW? Not too much later, I saw it, but I didn't know what I was seeing. And again, I was sheltered, but I would stay up and see ECW. But I did see the first UFC. So did they borrow from that? Or is that just like the most insane coincidence, because that was the premise of UFC 1?
Oh, I'm sure. No, I'm sure it was a coincidence. I can't imagine that UFC took that from FMW.
Right.
Because it wasn't around that often. It wasn't. So FMW started that in 1989, and it was pretty much obsolete within a little bit over a year, like 1991-ish or so.
Okay.
We kind of got rid of the main event. I mean, I guess they still did 92 because they brought in Lee and Spinks and did boxer versus wrestler, but it wasn't the whole gimmick of the promotion. They had already kind of moved on to death matches by 91, 92. But the very first part of FMW was being created was wrestler versus karate fighter. So I can't imagine, even though it was 4 years later that UFC took it, but I think it was just that same idea mindset of like, hey, what if a wrestler took on a boxer? What if a MMA guy took on a boxer? Things like that. I think that was just out there, and UFC was able to go, let's try it out. Whereas with FMW, it was obviously a work where, hey, let's have the rest, in a sense, it was Onita trying putting himself over as a star, and it worked. Because, like I said, Onita at the beginning of FMW wasn't a household name or anything like that, and by the end of FMW, he was a household name. So he obviously did something right, but that was his first idea of, okay, how am I going to make a name on myself? I'm going to fight a karate guy, and the karate guy is going to beat me 2 times, and then the 3rd time I'm going to beat him, and then see the wrestler can beat the karate guy. Just because you think a karate guy is real and a wrestler is, not a real fighter, look, I just beat a karate guy. That shows that wrestling can, wrestlers can beat it. So it was a way to get Onita over and, again, create FMW. And like I mentioned, he goes, okay, I did that. Now what do I do? And that's when it's like, okay, let's make this a deathmatch promotion. And that's what really worked.
What the hell is going on here? I had no idea that Leon Spinks. I'm like blown. I had no idea that I'm looking at Cole Cabana's Twitter about 1992 as he boxes Onita.
Yeah.
Or what is going on here? And then Mr. I'm gonna mispronounce this one really badly. Ganusake. Ganasuke, sorry. Now, let's get into this. You can't have all of that knowledge. You can't have what you just ran down without your own story. And we've touched on it a little bit of going to Japan, and I wanted to ease people into it. But just to give a little bit of tangible evidence, if you will, from Twitter, from Instagram. Wow. On Instagram, is it still Bret FMW, or is it
Bahu FMW World, actually?
Bahu? Okay.
Yeah, Bahu FMW World.
Now, does Bahu, am I missing something on now this is your collection of magazines.
Yeah.
How do you go about, where did you figure out that you were getting some traction to be able to obtain, was it that '08 trip, or where did you start to find, because what it seemed like is that a select few had it. You said like Wrestling Observer, a couple other people had it, and to remind people and to clarify, that was coming from a specialty direct TV channel, correct? That they would have to pay for special events, or did you have to get like the sports package, or how were you getting that? I guess is what I was asking earlier. How would you receive it in Japan?
So I started following FMW in 1997. It was just based off of, at the time, wrestling, there was the wrestling tape traders, or you could buy VHS tapes. And I went to a guy who had a whole bunch of collection, everything, Portland, Memphis, every ECW, USWA, AWA, FMW. And so he had described all these like top matches that he had. And it was like exploding ring match, swimming pool exploding death match, fire death match, coffin death match, things like, oh, wow. And, there's not GIFs at the time to even, or YouTube to see what the hell this is. So I bought those tapes and my mind was blown and I became a fan. And then I just used the internet, either through message boards or chat rooms. And so at the time it was AOL, and my AOL chat was Bahumath. And so and just when in a chat room, you just kind of shorten every name. And so everyone would just call me Bahu. And so that's how the Bahu name came about.
Okay. I didn't know. I was wondering if that was, had some kind of,
no,
I figured it did.
Name. And at the time I started up a website because, and at the time that's what people knew me as from the chats. It was kind of like, hey, this is my tape collection that I have. And hey, well, you know what? I have enough information. I can write biographies about like Hayabusa or certain wrestlers, based off the collecting of the tapes. I could fill in the gaps of what was going on. And so I started writing about the wrestlers. And then it's like, okay, let me start collecting results from years past and to the current day. And so it just became a full-on website, and that's when I created my website, Bahu's FMW World. And it was back in 1998 that I just had this collection of stuff, biographies, tapes for sale, news, results, things like that. And just as the years went by, after, well, I guess even just a couple of years, because I started in 98, after about a year or two of just talking to people and them talking to people, then I got in contact with I kind of became known as the FMW guy. And as a result, people would reach out to me, or I would reach out. I'd find people online, and I found a guy in South Korea. He was willing to send me tapes. And at the time it was the Japanese direct TV. You couldn't get it in America or anything like that, but it was Japanese direct TV, and he would send me the tapes every month. And then after a while, I think he just kind of faded away, or, just stopped talking to people. Well, I ended up getting in touch with a guy from Japan, and then he would start sending me the tapes up until the very end. So that was just, that's how I was able to get the collection of tapes at the beginning. And then just throughout the years, just collecting VHS tapes, checking auction sites, or knowing people that had certain tapes that they were willing to get rid of. And I was able to collect, all the commercial videotapes as a result. And that was that picture you sent, was all the FMW history of all the.
I can't believe I just can't believe it. Like these are magazines, correct?
So I was talking about the VHS tapes that.
Okay. So this
magazine came from.
Okay.
Going to Japan for the very first time in 2008 and going to a magazine store. It's called Totocon, which a lot of people in the inside know.
When they did the wrestlers, if you watch a DDT on Vice, I was going to say DDT or I'm trying to think of the other one that they did where they went there.
Yeah.
I think it was DDT. I think it was the DDT on Vice that they did where they went to that store. Yeah.
So at the time, I didn't. It was the group of people. So there's several different stores, especially back then. A lot of them have closed down, but there was like 4 or 5 Japanese shops that you could go and get old tapes or new DVDs or anything like that back in 2008. And the group that I went with, they're like, hey, let's stop at this store. And it's a different store now. They've moved and it's a completely different building. But at the time, it was still like these 2 stories of just it's just pretty much a thrift store of, from wall to wall, magazines, VHS tapes, costumes, old wrestling figures on the wall. You go up the stairs to the second floor, you still see all the Hasbro WWF figures on the wall, stuff like that. And so I ended up buying a bunch of the magazines that day. And then I found out they had a website. And throughout the years, I would buy from the website. They would just mail me the magazines. Or like I mentioned, I would go every summer and I would literally just sit there and just go through the magazines, pick out which ones. I mean, one time ended up having to pay an extra fine because my suitcase coming back was too heavy because I had so many magazines in it. But you know what? I realized it was worth it because I'm not paying the shipping. So I need to get as much as I can. So I would literally just fill my suitcase up with magazines pretty much to come back because I wasn't having to pay the shipping otherwise. So as a result, so I started in 2008, and now here we are, 2021, and that picture is just a collection of hundreds of magazines that I was able to collect. And my wife, at the time, I just stacked them upon stacked, and I actually showed a picture of Hayabusa one time of the magazines, and like I said, they're just stacked on stack. And he's like, "You have too much. That's too many magazines." But,
yeah. Did you have to learn Japanese? Did you have to? Was it easy, or did you have?
You don't have to learn Japanese. You can get by pretty much. There's, especially in Tokyo, because there's so much English. You go on the subway, they'll say where you're going in Japanese, and then they'll say where you're going in English. So, it's so much English and Japanese, and then so many people can speak broken English. So, if I'm lost or something, and now with phones, I mean, I was going before really smartphones, so I would ask someone if they didn't know Japanese. By the third person, if they didn't know English, by the third person, someone would know English and be able to direct me. So I never got so lost I couldn't find anything. But there's definitely, especially like I said in Tokyo, and now you being able to use your phone, it's pretty easy, I would say. As far as direction wise,
you got to be known as the FMW guy, is something you just mentioned. And from that, you don't have to, go deep dive into how you were contacted, call, email, text, whatever it was, or how it all came about. But 18 years ago, had I told you, hey, there's going to be this very, very popular documentary series that not only kept Vice going, got them sold to a streaming service. I know you don't know, but I feel like I'm going back in time in my DeLorean. Marty, you got to watch out. I'm not trying to play Doc Brown here, but you're approached by the producers of Dark Side of the Ring and to be interviewed. Mm-hmm. For you at that time, I don't know what nobody's end all be all goal can ever be really shared, or maybe I don't even know what mine is, but to be known as the FMW guy and to respect it, to take care of it, manage it the way you have, to really have reverence over it, and then to get that call to do an interview. Can you walk us through what we can know, as it has been made? We're not breaking any news here on this one. Yes, it's part of season 3. FMW. By the way, if you have any XPW tapes, let's talk off air. I didn't say that, but no, the real thing here is, can you talk about, was that a moment that for you made you step back and say, whoa, or did you see it coming?
I think I kind of saw it coming, honestly. So I think a lot of it was based off of me doing the history of FMW series that I have on YouTube. So that was kind of a big thing where a couple of years ago, a guy, Steven, he reached out to me and was like, hey, let's do a podcast. And so I'm just going to ask you FMW questions throughout the years. And so as we were doing the podcast, we got up to about episode 16 or so. And that's when I was like, you know what? I could probably do a YouTube video and just I have all the footage saved to a hard drive at this point. I can just do the editing and just put in what we're talking about. So if I'm talking about Onita going to the barbed wire, I'm talking about Onita going to the barbed wire as you're seeing it on the YouTube channel. So that kind of began to get some momentum and kind of a following. And then as we talked about the end of FMW, it's on episode 27, I go over the FMW owner who bought the promotion after Onita sold it to him. He and everything he did to be able to keep the promotion alive caused a lot of financial debt. And as a result, he borrowed a lot of money and could not pay it back. And as a result, when knowing he couldn't pay it back, he ended up killing himself. And so and then on top of that, Hayabusa was paralyzed. So that story, I've always thought like, hey, at the time there obviously wasn't going to happen or anything, but I was like, this could be like an true Hollywood story that everything happened. So I've had that mindset for the last decade or so that this should be a documentary. And so when I was doing the history of FMW and making that into a documentary in a sense by putting the video to everything we are talking about, that kind of, like I said, gained a lot of momentum, a lot of following, a lot of people watched it, and for the first time hearing the story, because they just, even just the hardcore fans knew, okay, the FMW owner, he killed himself because the Japanese he owed money to the Japanese mafia. There was so much more to the story. And, we talk about layers and the reasons why and what really happened. And so me going over that, a lot of people, like I said, people started talking about FMW, and then when they would kind of always start throwing, hey, what do you want to do? What episodes do you want to do for season 2? I would always get, hey, Bahu or Bret, you need to reach out to them and get do an episode with them. So they're always seeing my name or, getting, I was always getting added towards them. And so with season 3, I knew, that was the possibility of it coming out. And I actually, did a video of like, specifically like, here's exactly what happened. I took from the history of FMW episode, the story of Shoichi Arai and him passing. And, again, it's just this amazing story of just everything that happened, what he did to keep the promotion alive, to him, to his daughter and everything that happened with her afterwards. Things like that. That story is such a great story. I knew that they were gonna, if they had any interest in a Japanese one, then that was my big thing. Would they be willing to do a Japanese one, knowing that not that many people are going to know about the topic itself? But once that, they obviously did. They reached out to me, and the main person, the main producer, he actually apparently had been a big fan of mine for a while. He had, he'd gone through the history of FMW videos. He actually, I did a Masato Tanaka career music video, and he loves that. Every time I talked to him, he would always bring up how he would always have that playing. He played it for his friends and everything like that. So the fact that, he obviously was a fan of my work, he reached out to me and, hey, if there is going to be a season 3, I want to do FMW. So that was about almost a year ago or so that he reached out to me about that. So I've known for a while. And like I said, I just always kind of had a hunch if they're going to do a Japanese one, FMW, because even though All Japan or New Japan are bigger, there's not there might be a story or two that goes along with it. But with FMW, there's like, I still, I haven't seen the episode or anything like that. I have no idea how they're going to fit the whole story of FMW in 48 minutes. I'm still really,
I don't see that. I said the exact same thing, literally, and I did not mean to cut you off. Stole the words out of my mouth, because when I said that we had our phone conversation, and we'll go here for another about 10, 15 minutes. So if you want to get your questions in, get them in now. I said, they got to do 2 hours on this. There's no way. I heard in 48 minutes on the phone things I didn't know that I personally have tried to take the time out of my shoot job. You know, yeah, I was in TV news. I was a reporter, anchor, whatever. Left that, did this. But I still try to research the unknown or try to look up the, you know, those things. Let me ask you this. When you were interviewed, was it cathartic? Was it a release at all for you to have them say, probably not even ask as long-winded questions as I'm asking, but probably just say, well, go ahead, you know, like, you know, open up, you know, did it feel good to do the promotion justice after all the, I mean, 18 years, almost 2 decades of your life, and to do the promotion justice and to be the person in North America that we can go to and rely on. And I don't mean to like put all that weight on your shoulders, but really you've done such an amazing job of protecting this, understanding it, and not only that, converting it in a way that we can digest and understand as fans so that we can either A, enjoy it, B, understand it, or C, say, oh, I get it, but maybe it's not for me. For you personally, after all that work, the 8 trips to Japan, how did it feel to you when you were doing that scale, that high level of interview?
I mean, I think that, you know, obviously it was humbling in a sense of like, hey, you know, yeah, what I've been able to do, what I've been able to put together. And I'm glad, and I honestly don't know how much I'm going to be in it. You know, they might, and I know I was able to help them get several interviews with certain people on the show. Obviously, you know, Sabu, he's going to be on it. So they're going to have a lot of people interviewed as well. So the fact that, you know, like I said, I did a sit down interview with them for 3 hours. So obviously I know there's going to be a lot of editing out of me, you know, obviously. And so I honestly don't know how much I'm going to be in it, but I know that regardless how much I'm in it, the fact that I was able to kind of help them, you know, navigate them, give them information that they probably wouldn't have known otherwise, because obviously you want to make the show as good as possible. You want to, I was just reading what Jared said.
Yeah.
You want to make it, it's bigger now. It's even bigger than when I went. Yeah. But anyway, you know, you want to navigate it. You want to get, like I said, I was able to get them people that on the show that I think are really going to help the episode as well. Not just me, obviously, but, you know, but the fact that I can help navigate it and give them information, because there really isn't anyone that is able to really tell the exact detailed story of FMW that speaks very clear English. You know, you even get, if you get an Onito or someone like that, he might not be able to tell you the exact details of the end because he wasn't around. There was no one really, you know, from beginning to end that has so much, you know, that's been able to, because there's really only one wrestler, Ricky Fuji. He was there from the beginning to the end. And I've sat and talked to Ricky Fuji for hours. And honestly, I could say, I think, you know, he was there the whole time, but I know the details of the stuff that they want to know more than he does. You know, I know more about the ending than he does. I know more about the beginning than he does, you know, things like that, just the backstage stuff based off reading books or, you know, just talking to so many people, going to Japan and finding things out, sitting and talking to Hayabusa for hours and hours, you know, things like that, or reading memoirs, you know, so doing all that, I was able to, you know, gather so much information. So I'm glad I was able to help the episode. And I mean, I haven't seen the final copy. They haven't finished editing, but, you know, I hope that I am the reason that at least, you know, hey, there is it's not just a filler of, oh, this happened. No, like there's a real heart to it. And that's what I want to, I'm hoping that I was able to give to the show, that there is a heart, because I may mention, you know, the history of FMW episodes that I did. I really feel like that episode that I did about Shoichi Arai and the episode before that about Hayabusa's being paralyzed, those are my 2 favorite episodes, because I feel like those episodes really had heart that, you know, again, not everyone could give the details of exactly what was going on, you know, and so many people were able to learn about everything based off just those 2 episodes, because hey, you know, it's not just okay, well, I read this online and this is what happened. No, this is there's detail, there's information that not just everyone knows. And so, like I said, I'm hoping that I was able to give the show heart, like I was able to with those 2 History of FMW episodes, because otherwise anyone could have done what I did, just read online or whatever. But I wanted to make sure the episode is as good as it can possibly be, because hey, there's going to be competition. There's a lot of really interesting topics this season, so I'm hoping that it will be a learning experience for everyone, and it will have that heart for the episode.
I really appreciate the fact that you kind of gave us not the ending, but I don't want to use the word tease as we would news world. But the fact that you didn't give it away. Where can people on your YouTube channel find those episodes, if the ones that you just recommended?
You can just YouTube search History of FMW 26 or History of FMW 27. You want to just search.
So you think those are your prime?
That's the 2 ones that really tell the story of the ending of FMW. A lot of people like the first episodes as well, because hey, it's the build of Onita, it's the the creation of the promotion and everything. But my personal thing is 26 and 27, the 26 being the episode about Hayabusa being paralyzed, and 27 about FMW being closed. Those are the 2 episodes that, again, not just anyone can tell those stories that I was able to. And like I said, hopefully they use a lot of that. And I know they're going to talk about Arai, the ending with FMW and Arai and his passing and stuff like that. I know they'll, touch upon that. So, but I want to give it the detail that not just anyone could give. He took money from the Japanese mafia and he ended up losing his life as a result. There's like we talked about. There's layers to everything that happened, and it's a story that deserves the respect of actually people knowing about it. I had a FMW wrestler, when he found out about Darkseid having an FMW episode, he was really upset. He goes, I don't like this, because Americans, they don't really know what happened, and they don't have the same mindset, as a Japanese person. And I told him, I was like, well, I did everything I can to give it the best it can. I used information I had from books that were written by FMW people, the owner of FMW, the booker at the time of FMW. I used that information to it. And he was like, okay, as long, if you're doing that, I'm okay with it then. So like that, that was a cool experience, to have that.
I was in what? I'm glad you answered that, because I was worried about the kickback of, are they think that we're going to do it? They're a Canadian, Vice is based out of Canada from what I understand, but they've since signed on to Hulu. Again, Dark Side of the Ring has been their number 1 show by far. The wrestlers, go check it out. They're all very eclectic episodes, each in their own right. Again, you guys know I love the DDT episode because I had no idea what I was in for. But when I watched the first couple of seconds, I go, this is what I want to do with my life. Don Parker's got some good questions, and then I've got one in bonus content, so we won't keep you too long. How did the exploding barbed wire work? Was it electrical currents, little pieces of explosives? And I'll add on to that, was that ref suit fire retardant?
Yeah, so it was supposed to prevent the fire, the heat and everything, because when the ring would explode, you have all these, pretty much, fireworks just setting off right there, and so
that's a shoot. That's not.
Right? Yeah, no, it's real fire. It's real explosions and everything like that. But they know if you're in the center of the ring, it's not going to be too bad. But you showed a video of Hayabusa going into the explosions, going into the exploding cage at the exact time that the ring exploded, and so he took maximum damage, and he had cuts all over his arm. He had burns as a result. So, it just depends on how you did it. Terry Funk and Onita in the middle of the ring over on top of each other, that didn't do too much damage to them.
I noticed that. I was to say, because he gets in, he's hitting him.
Yeah.
He's wailing away. And I'd mentioned I'd shown my mom this, and she goes, what the hell is going on? She's like, well, he's really hitting him. And I'm like, Yeah, they're not like he's fully potatoing him, but then you're right. I never noticed that it is kind of like this move.
Yeah.
Was that the point? By the way, I think a lot of people are confused. The time ticking down, just that it would explode. Was that the match is over, or do you have to pin the guy? Some people are not informed on that one.
So it depended on. So each year, let's just say, they did it a couple times. The very first time with Onita versus Terry Funk, they had it where Onita beat Terry Funk before the 15 minutes explosion went off. And then he pins Terry Funk, and then he's like, I'm walking off. Okay, I won. Well, Terry Funk's still sitting in the middle of the ring. And then that's when Onita, and the timer's going off, 10, 9, 8, 7. And Onita goes, Terry's not getting up. I got to go save him. And he rushes back in the ring, trying to wake him up, slapping him in the face. And then when he realizes Terry's not getting up, I need to cover his body. And
I thought he was.
Yeah, at the time they were thinking like, well, the big spot is the explosion, so you got to have the match over by that point. Well, then as time went by, they ended up going, no, the big explosions during the match. So it was always after 15 minutes, but after that they would realize, okay, let's continue the match. Then it's like, look at these warriors still going at it with smoke all over the ring and dust, and they're still having a match. So they the first couple times it was the pinfall would happen and then the 15 minutes would go off. But then the last several times it was 15 minutes go off and the match continues until there's a 3 count.
Best part of your Japan trips that is non-wrestling related.
I'm just going back to the question because I didn't really answer the first question real quick.
Oh, did I? I'm sorry.
Yeah, just there are explosions. Yeah, there's electrical current explosions. They would pretty much they got with a electrician essentially and put the explosions in the barbed wire. And there's been times where Onita has gone into the barbed wire and just randomly like a fireball will go off and his arm has gotten burnt as a result, just because of what they're messing with. You're messing with electrical currents and explosions. And like I said, there's one time, it wasn't that long ago, 2013, Onita goes into the exploding barbed wire and a fireball pretty much goes off on his arm and his whole arm is burnt off. So so that was to answer that question. And then as far as things to do in Japan, one of my favorite moment just off the top of my head was Mount Fuji. Going to Mount Fuji, going there, such an amazing experience. Going to a waterfall that was right there and just spending time all day essentially at this beautiful waterfall in Mount Fuji. That's I don't know, it's like kind of like a out of a body experience, just being there. So that's off the top of my head, number one. I guess it would still be considered wrestling, but some of the most fun nights I've ever had were going to there's a Japanese wrestling bar in
Roppongi?
No, it's in Shinjuku.
Okay.
And so, which is pretty much the same thing as Roppongi, where there's it's nightlife and everything. It's pretty much essentially similar to Roppongi, but it's a wrestler bar where each night this independent wrestler, he runs the bar, but he ends up bringing in a different wrestler each night. So there's a different wrestler that bartends, and so depending on the wrestler, if like you're into Japanese wrestling, Japanese independent wrestling, the smaller promotions, hey, you might have a Mr. Ganosuke or something like that be your bartender. And some of the most fun nights I've ever had were just, and again, it just depends on the people that were there that night. But, just talking to wrestling fans about a product that you're into, because you can't just go to a bar and talk about Big Japan or Freedoms or, FMW from 20 years ago. But at this bar you could. And so, having these hardcore fans, being able to talk to them and being able to, impress them with my knowledge and stuff like that, and just have fun, talk to them. That was some of the best nights of my life, just going to that bar till 3 a.m. and just talk wrestling while they have wrestling playing on the TV screen.
You have the Fireball 2013 because I'm looking for it on Google right now. Of the arm thing.
It would be in my history of FMW. I wouldn't have had it on the top 100 or anything like that.
Right. So it'll probably be in the later episodes.
Yeah, it'd be 2013, so that would be episode 43 or so.
40, in the 40. Well, I'm gonna watch. I'm going through a whole bunch because I got the feel for it, and I need to see it now. I'm beyond excited. Follow up that we got. Okay, the other thing is, I noticed is about DDT. They did something you just talked about, bartender service.
Yeah.
They had a night where like the bartender, or like the people that serve those viewing, the spectators, right, were the talent, were the wrestlers. And I'm like, wait, what the hell is going on here? And they were like serving beer and like making tips and like doing other things. So I'm like, is that a cultural thing, or is that like and then you just described that. So I'm learning something. I hope other people are that go and check it out. I don't know what that.
It also depends on the night as well, because again, a lot of it depends on the bartender, if he knows any bit of English. So if, there were nights where it's like, okay, no one knows what I'm saying. This is kind of just blowing smoke in my face. This is not that fun. But like I said, there was other nights where like, this is the most fun I've ever had. Like, oh my God, it just depends on who's there, the random people that show up that night. It really is just by chance. And if you can go, you'll eventually have a great night. Like I said, some of my best nights, some of my fun times ever were going to that bar. The DDT one I went to one time, and yeah, so essentially it was a lower, the bartender is a lower card wrestler, and the Japanese wrestler that owns that bar I was just talking about, that brings the wrestlers in, he told me, hey, I'm a small independent wrestler. I don't make that much money, but being a bartender, I make, that's how I make my living. So being a bartender, you can make a lot of money, if you have a successful bar. It just depends on if you have the people that are willing to go. And so you have the DDT bar, and you have a lower card wrestler that's not, probably making that much money wrestling, but he probably makes a decent amount while running the bar as a result. So it just, being the wrestler is how he makes his name, to be able to make the money to be the bartender. And essentially that's what the DDT, bartenders would be, where, okay, you're an undercard wrestler, you're not making that much, but since you're a DDT wrestler, you can be a bartender at the DDT bar and make money. And so, yeah, I was able to go to that one time. I'm not the biggest DDT fan, so
it's different. I know. I warned people. And again, our audience, as I had mentioned, very open-minded, mature.
Yeah.
Watching Kota Ibushi at Wrestle Kingdom 15, what he did on night 1 and night 2, versus the blow-up doll or an invisible person, is going to be a little bit different for you on a lot of levels. And for me, it's an art. They were doing what they were doing, and DDT is very different than anything I'd ever seen. It's just the way. Now, see, I'm caught by editing. The way, if you watch how that's edited, it's very slow at the beginning of the Vice documentary of here's this character. Oh, I don't know who that is. Why is that guy's pants halfway off? Wait, what's going on here? And then it's boom, 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 rapid shots, subway fights. I'm like, did I just see Jacket? Wait, that guy have a Roman candle? What the hell is going on? So what they did was, I was so entranced by the way that they hooked me that I sometimes blend together my love for things by way of the visual art side of things. And I think that's oftentimes tough to discern. If you don't want to give this one fully away, but follow a question from that Don Parker before we get to Jared Wise, because this is a great one. And then I have got one in bonus content for you. I have a million, but I'm going to ask only one in bonus. Onita post FMW, how crazy is that story? I'll let you handle that as you will. If you want to pass on it, feel free.
Well, I'm gonna guess that he's kind of asking about the politic aspect of what Onita did. So essentially, Onita left FMW because Onita retired, and then he came back pretty much after, like I said, he did a year of touring and all these thousands of people coming to see Onita for the last time. Well, then a year and a half later comes by and Onita goes, I want to come back. But FMW is, and again, it's kind of like Hulk Hogan coming back in 1993. Bret Hart's already been established as the top guy. We've kind of changed direction. And now the big guy that the promotion's been around for a couple of years, or have been around for the last 7-8 years, is back. And he's a bigger star. And now he wants kind of, to go back to being the number one star, even though, hey, the promotion is not really about you anymore. Well, so after 2 years, there's pretty much like a civil war between Hayabusa and Onita and just all the politics and drama. And FMW decides, hey, Onita, you got to go. And so they kick Onita out. And Onita goes, you know what? Okay, I'm going to go to New Japan and I'm going to reinvent myself because, and to be fair to FMW, Onita had kind of like, kind of like the WWF Hulk Hogan in 1993. Oh, you're not the 80s Hulk Hogan. That's what Onita. Okay, you're not Onita from a couple years ago. You cut your hair, something like that. You don't have the same personality. So Onita goes and decides, I'm going to go to New Japan and I'm going to be a heel, and recreates himself. And a lot of people know about his famous entrance through the Tokyo Dome where the fans hate him. They're throwing trash at him. And he's just smiling with a cigarette in his mouth.
I've always tried to figure that stuff out on my own, but never, again, I'm the type of person that I'd rather just ask somebody that actually knows what they're talking about. Instead of that. And the final question that we have before we get into bonus content for my question. Is the following, and if you do have this, if you have this.
Sorry, what? Say that question again. The question that you're just asking.
Ever been to Ribera, and do you have a jacket?
No, I don't have a jacket because you got to be a wrestler. You got to be a wrestler at a certain level too.
You have to have like a sponsor. What is that all about?
No, you don't.
Okay, but that's a thing, right?
As far as the sponsor goes,
like, don't they have like wealthy businessmen who kind of like sponsor? Is that a thing, or am I?
Oh yeah, that's a completely different topic.
Okay.
That's how you go out. If you have a sponsor, that means essentially like, hey, someone's willing to, you go out and have dinner with them, a businessman, and you act like you're their friend for the night and you're getting paid for it. So wrestlers will make money doing that as a result, going out to a bar or going out to a restaurant, and the sponsor pays them just, essentially to be their friend and hang out with them for the night. They're getting paid and they're, getting to hang out with a famous wrestler. And so, but that's a different topic in regards to that. The Ribera thing.
Take chops, maybe get a super kick or two in.
Ribera is a guy that decided, hey, Stan Hansen, I believe, back in like the early 80s, really liked his restaurant, gave the recommendation to all the foreigners, hey, foreigners, come to this restaurant. The steak is great. So then all the foreigners started coming to this restaurant, and it kind of became a thing where he would take pictures of all the wrestlers and that had came to his restaurant. And so you go to Ribera, and there's pictures all over the walls of the wrestlers that have been to the steakhouse. And he actually, because it became a big deal, and the steaks are expensive, they're like $100.
Whoa!
Yeah,
does our money not go as farther? Or I thought it went farther.
Now, I mean, it always fluctuates, but I would say right now 100 yen is $1 essentially. I mean, pretty close.
Right. I would say I paid 999 yen for New Japan per month or whatever.
Yeah, that'd be $9.99. Yeah, so like you just take the $2
zeros a month. Yeah,
you just take the 2 zeros out. But essentially, yeah, you paying
99. Yeah, 99. Yeah, I'm sorry, not 900. Jesus, Carl.
So you take the 2 zeros out. But anyway, it ends up equaling out to about $100. So they're expensive steaks, but it does really well. And at least when I would go, and so there's actually 2 of them. He built a bigger Ribera steakhouse, so there's 2 Ribera steakhouses, and both of them are just completely filled with pictures everywhere. I actually like the original one that's smaller because it's not as busy. The bigger one, there's always a line or something like that. You have to wait. the original one that's not as big, you go and then the owner, the guy that created it, he's there. And when I went, there was only like one other person. So I actually enjoyed the smaller one, but most people probably even know about the bigger one. That's where like the WWE wrestlers and stuff go. But yeah, each time a wrestler goes to it, especially like a WWE wrestler or any Japanese wrestler of name value, you're going to get a revered jacket for free. And so that's kind of like you wrestled in Japan, you get a Ribera's, and you went to Ribera's, you get a Ribera's steakhouse jacket.
Perfect, my friend. All right, I got one last question for you in bonus content as we hit it. Right now, I'm not going to go Dark Side of the Ring 3 hours on you, though I could, but. All right, as a fan, now I want to make it clear. Dark Side of the Ring said that there are 14 episodes. Doesn't mean that there's 14 separate topics. There might be some that might be 2-parters. Maybe Jake Roberts is a 3-parter. But for you, from what has been released, and this, I'm looking at this from the Dark Side of the Ring Twitter, what's been released. Nick Gage, I'm not going to lie to anybody. I've always been transparent. I had to do a shitload of research. Now I can say the S word because it's past the 7:30 mark here, West Coast. On Bruiser Bedlam, no idea who that was. I had to listen to Cornette's podcast to figure out who the hell that was, why he was being XPW, Brian Pillman, Jake the Snake Roberts, mixed in with Grizzly Smith, Sam Houston. Me getting ripped off on Collision in Korea. Out of all of those outside of FMW, the ones that have been, so again, I'll run them down. Nick Gage, Bruiser Bedlam, which is going to take a lot of research for folks to understand. And I don't even want to try and pronounce his Canadian name because I don't know if it's Ion or Eon. Not even going to try. I'm just going to go with Bruiser Bedlam. XPW, Collision in Korea, because I think that one is beyond fascinating, especially with Inoki's politics and what he was trying to do with these World Peace Games. I'm a little bit partial to that, so don't placate to me. You don't have to agree with me on that one. Nick Gage, Bruiser Bedlam, XPW, Brian Pillman, one of my favorite, Jake Snake Roberts. I think I got them all.
Yeah.
Any of those are especially looking forward to. If I'm forgetting any of them, please chime in if you want to, or if I forgot one that's been made public, please let me know.
Yeah, off the top of my head, that's all I can say. I know there's a couple others that haven't even been announced, so I don't want to say it. But I think the Collision Korea one stands out for me. I mean, I'm interested in that. I helped them collect pictures. So they went when they came over. They went through the magazine collection and they found a bunch of the Collision in Korea pictures in the Japanese magazines that I had. So I was able to help them with that. I know that they interviewed some really big names when it comes to that they're keeping secret. So I'm looking forward to that episode. I mean, and Brian Pillman, I mean, I was a Brian Pillman fan back in '92 in WCW. I didn't even really like WCW, and Brian Pillman and Cactus Jack were the two guys that really stood out to me as a WWF fan even. And so I was big time Bret Hart fan in '97, especially with the Hart Foundation and with Brian Pillman. And so, that broke my heart when he passed away. And they gave me, just the information I was told about Melanie Pillman and just everything she's done since his passing. That's something I really want to see as well. So I would think those two episodes, I know a lot of people are really interested in the Nick Gage. I I respect Nick Cage, with everything that he's put his body through, and he's toured with Big Japan for a bunch of years. So I'm interested in that as well. I'm
surprised they didn't go Necro Butcher instead of.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the Trump thing with Necro Butcher.
Oh yeah. Oh geez.
I actually was when I was in Japan. Necro Butcher wrestled Jun Kasai at Corrigan Hall, and I was at the show. And so I'm the only English speaking person there in the building. He's just sitting there, and I was like talking to him, and he's like, "Yeah, I would have retired like 5 years ago, but I got like 8 kids that I got to support, so I got to keep going."
I don't want to be here, but here's the deal. Gotta do it. Again, Bret, I can't thank you enough. There's not a long enough I could spit out a lot of neat vocabulary and verbiage, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to simply say this much. I really respect all that you've done. I continue to look forward to all that you have to present with FMW and maybe otherwise. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. And with that, Don Parker, thank you for suggesting that I should go and look at this, because I need to be informed, and I hope that everybody did get a little bit, and they can find you on YouTube at Bret FMW World and BHU FMW on Twitter, and then from there you can pretty much find anything. Bret, thank you again. I know that our audience appreciates it, and from friend to friend, I truly do too.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, thank you. All right, we're gonna play out with what we played in with, and a little look back at FMW.
トヨタの引退式っていうのもある。認められない。式っていうのもあるんですけども。
You know I have no more love for anybody in this world